Hello everyone. So today we're going to be talking composting. I've been composting for a few years now. I call it, I guess it's called like lazy composting, but today I'm going to start a compost pile with the intention of making compost that I can use quickly and be more intentional with it. Use the basic ingredients that you need to make compost, and I'm going to show you how.
So what do you need to compost? Well, you need greens and browns. The best green that you can use is grass clipping. Grass clippings break down very quickly, which means they create a lot of heat quickly. And you need browns. Browns can be different things. I'm going to use, just keeping it simple, shredded leaves. So these are really easy things to accumulate. If you have grass and you have trees, you'll be able to make some compost. Now, the title of this is 3-ingredient compost, and I'm going to actually add in some more browns just because I have them available. It's not technically brown, it's white, but those bags, where are they at? Those bags right there, they are full of paper shreddings from my place of work. And you can use paper shreddings that have ink on them. The ink that's used, black ink, that's used when printing things, it's not toxic. You wouldn't want to use like glossy shredded paper or shredded paper that's got a lot of coloring to it. Other things that you could use are cardboard. So I don't use any of the cardboard that has any coloring on it, like, cereal boxes. I'll use those as like a weed barrier underneath of my mulch, but I won't use them in my compost. So these are the 3 ingredients that we're going to use to make the 3-ingredient compost. 2 other ingredients that aren't, I guess you could use those as, it could be considered 5-ingredient, but would be air and water. But that's not the title of this, and that stuff is like, you don't have to do those things, but they'll help speed up the process. So I'm going to do those things. So air would just mean turning it on a regular basis. Water would mean, if you're having a really dry spell, just sprinkle some water on it and then turn it. And that'll speed up things. All right, so now let's talk ratios of green to brown. I have heard all different kinds of ratios, and I think that you could really get hung up on it, but I've heard 30 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, 25 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, 5 to 1. I've heard even 50-50, so 50% nitrogen and 50% carbon. I today am going to go with 5 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, 5 bucketfuls of the leaves and paper shreddings to 1 bucketful of the grass. Too much of one thing is, that old saying, too much of one thing is not good. Same goes for composting. Too much carbon slows the process. Too much nitrogen can make your compost slimy and gross. It will eventually break down into something useful, but it's nasty and it stinks. So, like this pile of grass, if I just leave it sit in a big pile and decompose, it can tend to, it'll start to smell weird. It stinks. Ratio wise, you just, again, everything's an experiment. You just got to experiment and see what works for you. So today we're going to try out and experiment with 5 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. Another thing that you want to think about is with your grass, you want to make sure that no pesticides have been sprayed on it, like weed and feed. The weeding part, like that gets rid of your weeds, that's toxic. If you were to put your grass clippings in your compost and then put that on your garden, your plants will die. Then there are reasons why you'd want to compost. A big one, you're keeping some of your trash out of the landfills, thereby you're doing something beneficial for the environment. And making the compost for your garden beds or your flower beds is very beneficial to them. It adds a lot of nutrients, it adds a lot of microorganisms. Worms love compost, and worms are great for garden beds, flower beds, anything. You can even add your compost to your lawn and it will add nutrients and help feed your grass. It can help build better soil. Let's say you have clay soil. Adding compost to that, it will help break down the clay and make it fluffier and just better soil to plant in. If you have too sandy soil, adding compost helps keep moisture retention, and again adds some microorganisms and organic material. Adding compost to maybe older soil in a garden bed that you haven't, amended at all, will attract more worms, and worms make what are called worm castings. And if you don't know what worm castings are, they're worm poo-poo. And worm poo-poo is very, very good for plants. They actually sell worm castings by the bagful, believe it or not. And I've bought a bag. I've bought 2 bags before. So I've bought bagfuls of worm poo. And I will amend my soil with that, and plants love it. You can even use compost if it's broken down enough as seed starting mix. Of course, you'd want to sieve it and make sure that there's no big chunks in it. It's my lazy compost bin, and it's just made out of wood pallets, and then I've used some cardboard to try to keep it all in. But I just throw stuff in here as I have it. So there's a lot of paper shreddings, you see, and I rarely turn this, and it still makes compost. Let's get in here. Very usable, broken down compost. I mean, if I get in there a little bit better, there's probably more. This has got everything in it. This has got all my food scraps, paper shreddings, grass clipping. It's also got, I have a pet rabbit, and she is litter trained, and I empty out her litter box, and I guess you could call it the deep litter method, where I just add more paper shreddings and hay on top of her poo throughout the week so that she has like a clean place to stand on. And I change her litter box, or I dump her litter box in here once a week. Rabbit poo is an excellent amendment for your garden. What else is in here? Toilet paper rolls, paper towel rolls. But this is like what the eggs sit in when I get the boxed eggs. Cardboard box is ripped up into small pieces. When I need compost, I'll just kind of, like I did right here, dig some from the bottom and add it to my garden beds. Okay, and then this compost bin, these are not supposed to be in here, but I buried them with fleece. Those are corn stalks that my neighbor gave me that they used for decoration. I'm going to just let them break down. Besides those corn stalks, this is just straight up shredded leaves. Some of this I shredded today, but that's another thing. I mean, you don't have to shred your leaves, but the more broken down you can make things, the quicker you'll be able to make compost. And it looks like there's confetti or something in there. Oops, somebody had a party. You could just have a compost bin full of leaves and end up getting something called leaf mold. So if you just let this sit here, maybe I'll throw a picture up of what just broken down leaves ends up being. I mean, you can see what broken down leaves ends up being. If you go out into a forest where there's a ton of trees and where leaves just sit over time, if you just dig the top layer of dirt, that's leaf mold. This is the bin that we makeshift put together for the specific compost I'm going to make today with you guys. Cut all this extra black stuff off, but to try to keep the wood from getting rotten really quick, we put this black material. And then these are wood, well, they're plastic pallets that are wood pellets, come for the heat in the winter because we heat with a wood pellet stove, and they have plastic on them already. So, well, this one's wood, but it had plastic on it too. But this is the bin we are going to make our 3-ingredient compost in. And I like to compost on the ground. It's an easy way for the worms to come up through the ground, microbes, different bugs and stuff.
will be able to find this compost pile easier if I'm on the ground. A very helpful thing to have is a lawnmower with a blade specifically for mulching or shredding. Also with the bag attachment so you can collect stuff. You don't need it. If you didn't have this, you could, mow your lawn and then rake up the grass. Mow up the leaves and then rake up the shredded leaves. You do what you can with what you have. So the mulcher just goes on the back like that, collects all the leaves. If you don't have a lot of trees, ask your neighbors. In the fall, cities have what are called like leaf pickup days. So all the people will rake up their leaves, bag them, and then leave them out sitting, and the city will come and pick them up like a certain weekend. It just so happened I passed a house one day with my husband, and they had, I'd say, 25, 30 bags lined up along their road. I asked them, I said, listen, I like to make compost with leaves. Do you mind if I take your bags of leaves? And the woman was very gracious and was just like, oh my gosh, yes, you can take all the leaves you want. So most people are going to be happy to give you your leaves. I get the leaves from both my neighbors. And I'll show you how I get, this is like really, really broken down leaves. So this will turn into compost very quickly. So usually I'll go over the leaves with more than one pass. I'll go over them several times. Paper shreddings. I work at a dental office. I mean, if you really wanted a brown and you couldn't get leaves, you could probably, I've never done this before, but I work at an office, but you could stop at any office that you know that shreds paper and ask them, what do you do with your paper shreddings? Can I have a bag? I want to make compost with them, If you really want it, all you have to do is ask. My philosophy is, if there's a will, there's a way. So this is all I'm going to do. I'm going to take 5 buckets of the leaves and dump it here, and then I'm going to take 1 bucket of the grass and dump it here, stir it, and do it again. Run out of grass clippings, and this is the pile I ended up with. So there's the top of the bins. All right, so here is my plan. I'm not going to add to this compost pile for a month. It's Thursday now. Thursday, March, is it 11th or 12th? But every Thursday, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out and I'm going to turn this. And I'm going to water it. I'm going to make sure that it has air and it has water. And I'm going to video what it looks like, give an update every week for 4 weeks. And we're going to see what we come up with in 4 weeks. So the next video that I do about composting is going to be what this looks like after a month. And can I make usable compost in 30 days? Let's find out together.